Sing helps.
Okay, we're all set? Yeah. Good evening, welcome to the Nahant School Committee for School Committee meeting on January 14th, 2020. Our first order of business is to salute the flag. Sorry. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Never hear the end of that?
You want something?
Wasn't very.
Had a blank. So, okay. Oh, Happy New Year, everybody. But second order of business. So next on the agenda is the reading and approval of the minutes from the 12/10/2019 meeting. Attached, all of us were present. Did anyone have any comments, questions? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the school committee regular meeting minutes for December 10th, 2019.
A second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Lauren. All in favor?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Great. Continuing on, the next order of business is correspondence and community input. We have someone in the audience. Please join us. If you can start by just stating your name
Sure,
and where you live.
absolutely. Carl Macario, Hovey Way. Good evening. Just a couple of things. I wanted to come tonight because I wanted to express thanks and some feedback on using the gym at the school. We started back in November an indoor hockey league. And we made sure that the sticks were compliant with the floor. So we wanted to thank the superintendent and Kevin, and also the school committee. We've got almost 50 people playing in the league. It's Wednesday nights, 7 to 9, 6:30, somewhere around there. But we've got tremendous feedback we've had people come down and watch the games. I think over 90% of the people playing in the league are from Nahant. Just great feedback. It's been great for the community. People are thrilled that they can do something over the winter. It's in town. It's a beautiful gym. So I wanted to come down and say thank you, and I wanted people to know that we appreciate having that as an asset that we can use and take advantage of. The school's been great. The staff has been great. And I just wanted you to know that, and if you had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But that's why I wanted to come down tonight personally, because I get drafted into being the commissioner of the NIHL, the Nahant Indoor Hockey League. So it's been a great time. So
I do have a question. Is it
Yes, sir.
men's, women, co-ed combination, or?
right now it's just men,
Okay.
but we're not against women playing. We just can't find anybody yet that wants to play.
My
But
wife was an indoor floor hockey player for many, many years. So
well,
for a league, so.
what's happening is, so we have 5 teams, and we have a goalie, a defenseman, and 2 forwards, however you want to put the team out there. But so we have 4-on-4, and we have, because most of us are not in good shape, we have to have plenty of subs. So you're out there running around for a few minutes, and then you're gassed. So, but we're almost up to 8 teams. We combined a couple, and we have 5 right now. I think next year we're probably going to be upwards of having 8 teams. We might have to try to go to 2 nights if they're available. I don't know, but it's just been overwhelming, the feedback that we've got from everybody. It's more than I expected. So, yeah, it's just a great thing for the town. And like I said, people are coming down to watch, families and kids, which is fantastic. So, yeah, watching their dad run around and run out of breath. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Does it go all winter, or?
It's 8 weeks. It started last week, the second week is Thank you, sorry. So it started last week, the second game's tomorrow night, and it runs to March, it's March 4th, and then we have a playoff game, and then we're hoping to have some kind of awards night or a banquet at the Knights or something, which we'll invite all of you guys to. You can come. If you want to play, let me know. We'll put a team together. We can have a school committee team.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Do we have any other correspondence and community input? No? All right. Examination and authorization of the bills is
In process.
ongoing. All right, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Parentozzi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item is item 5A on your agenda. It's the Nahant Teachers Association Sick Leave Bank Formal Procedures and Agreement. For many years, starting in 1982, the NTA Teachers Unit, Unit A, has had a sick leave bank. Unfortunately, at some point in the years between 1982 and this year, the sick leave bank has fallen into disarray. Records were not kept. The union thought that the school district was keeping the records. The school district thought that the union was keeping the records. And nobody has actually used sick time out of the bank for over a decade, maybe even 2 decades. So I felt that that was not the best way of doing business. So what I did is had a couple of meetings with the NTA Unit A president, vice president, and secretary, and we have come up with the documents that are in your packet. First of all, the first document is the actual language in the contract. So you see, you have already approved vis-a-vis the approval of the contract, and previous school committees have approved vis-a-vis their approval of the contract agreement since 1982, the existence of a sick leave bank. The problem we had was, as I said, we had no records and we had no procedures. So with a couple of meetings and discussions, dialogue, negotiations, the document in front of you really formalizes the contract language so that everyone, you as the arbiters of financial obligations and details for the district, myself and the principal as the administrators, and the members will have a clear understanding of the procedures of the sick leave bank. Now, the most important thing is that since we had no records, the discussion took place, well, how do we feed the bank? So it's been on the books, obviously, for many, many years, but there are no records about how many people had joined, who donated a day or two, and who did not. So what we decided to do was start at ground zero. As of my signing of this document, any member of the NTA Unit A who wants to join will donate days consistent with the enrollment paragraph in the formal agreement. So if you're a full-time member of Unit A, you will donate 1 day. If you are a 0.5 to 0.9 FTE, you would donate 1 day. And anyone who is less than 0.5, obviously 0.4 or less, would donate a half a day per year to feed the bank. So the obvious question is, since we're not a school district with 500 teachers, what if somebody needs days prior to the bank becoming a large number? The Sick Leave Bank Committee has the authority to assess extra days in order to feed the bank so that there would be enough days for someone who needed it. Every day that goes in is a day that the individual NTA members do not have to use personally. So it's not like we're giving days, we're shifting days from personal use to group use. The other thing that's important is to recognize that we have a significant percentage of part-time NTA Unit A members. They would use days at a much slower rate. So that's why we felt it was important not to assess them one day per year. So for example, we have I'm going to just pick a subject, an art teacher who works 1 day per week. They're 0.2. If they needed 2 months, it would be a maximum of 8 days as compared to a full-time person who needed 2 months, where it would be 40 days. So it's very different. But the guidelines have been negotiated and are well thought out. And in the copy you have in your packet, not the one I emailed to you last week, but the one you have in your packet, it is already endorsed by the union president. And because it's not contractual, it's really an administrative procedure, I felt comfortable signing it for you, but not until you had an opportunity to review it, to ask me questions, and propose, actually, if you propose that you don't want me to sign it and you would prefer the chair to sign it, that's fine with me. And then the third sheet of paper in the packet is the actual form.
I handed you just some little edits, but they're
Yes.
not, they don't have to do with the content, they're more
Yes,
format.
members of the committee, the chair gave me some edits that I will bring back to the association and go over with them. But
It's mostly just really nitpicky things.
yeah,
You refer to the committee, you say referring to the committee, and then throughout, sometimes say committee, sometimes say sick leave bank committee. It was just
Right.
being nitpicky. I have one question. What, somebody donates sick leave, and they can donate, if they're full-time, they can donate 1 day
per year.
maximum.
Everyone has the same assessment.
Okay,
Full-time people, 1 day per year. Part-time over 0.5, 1 day per year. Part-time under 0.5, a half a day per year. Unless the sick bank needs days because of someone's significant illness, then the sick bank committee can determine an additional assessment. One of the things that came to me today, Madam Chair, if I may, that concerned me till I thought it out, was person A joins the sick bank for X number of years, let's say 5, so they donate 5 days. Then they don't join the sick bank for 5 years, pick it up again in the 11th year, and that year they need sick days. And I said, whoa, that's not fair. And then I thought it through. It's the same thing mathematically, because they didn't donate a day for 5 years, but they have to use all of their own personal time before they can use the sick bank time, so they would have 5 more days of their own personal time. So it kind of, it's a wash. And I had to think it through. I hope I didn't confuse everybody, but I was worried about somebody joining for 1 year, not joining, not giving days, then joining the year they thought they would need the sick bank. But what happens is it ends up mathematically the same number of days, because they would have that many more personal days to use before they can go to the sick bank.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What if, when somebody retires, the leave they put in the bank stays there?
That's correct. The bank owns the days once they're assessed and donated. There's no payment to the individual for donated days. They can't get them back, but they're left in the bank for members of the association to use.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Should we approve this?
You certainly can if you wish to, but as I said, it's really an administrative process that I've worked on. But I certainly would appreciate your support.
I just had two really brief questions. Who is in charge of the clerical documentation on who donates, who doesn't donate? That should be the NTA, correct?
No.
It's gonna be
As of
different.
today, I had a conversation with Chris Katzos, and we are going to keep the records. The NTA is going to tell us who donates and who does not. We're not getting involved with asking people to donate a sick day.
Okay.
I'm not comfortable with that. But the treasurer or the secretary or the president or vice president and an officer of the union will give us a list. And every year we do a form for each staff member that says, you know, the history of their use of sick days. We're going to, Chris and I designed a new one that adds a column for a donated day that comes off the total every year.
And then the NTA is in charge of creating the committee, correct?
Actually, the committee,
Because in my experience, it's the union leadership, makes a decision on who are the members of the sick bank committee.
correct. They are, well,
Not
let me be
assigned
very
by-
clear. I'm a member, the superintendent of schools is a permanent member of the committee representing the school committee, and the NTA is responsible for their membership,
Okay,
totally,
thank you.
which is probably what you meant,
Yes.
yeah. They can't kick me off, though.
No. They can kick you somewhere else, but they can't kick you off there.
Does anybody have any other questions or any objection to this moving forward? I don't think we need to vote on it then, like you said, it's an administrative matter.
Okay, it's up to you, Madam Chair.
Supportive of it?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, the next item is item 5B, and it's simply for your information, and it is taking up a significant portion of the packet. It is the 2018-2019 annual report of the North Shore Educational Consortium, for your information, and please, any member of the committee who has a question about it, please feel free to contact me with your questions. It's a significant document. It has a lot of details about the education provided by the consortium, its members, the demographics, etc.
We're lucky to have it.
Yes, we are. 5C is the Student Opportunity Act. And I'm going to do this in two stages. One is I'm going to remind the school committee members of what it is. And second, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. And then I will be putting this on your agenda either next meeting or the meeting after that, depending upon when the DESE and the governor determine the actual funding. So the Student Opportunity Act is the additional funding that's going to to Chapter 70 this year because of the surplus of a significant amount of money, I think $1.3 billion in the state budget. Along with additional money, there is additional accountability. The law, as passed almost unanimously, states, and I quote, This money is, quote, for addressing persistent disparities in achievement among student subgroups, unquote. So the law clearly identified additional funds, and it equally clearly identified what those funds are supposed to be used for. So on January 8th, I received, and other superintendents in the Commonwealth received, a lengthy email from the commissioner. And so I'm going to just bullet what it says, and if anybody wants to see a copy of it, please let me know, and I'll certainly give it to you. Number one, the DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, is responsible for distributing the money by some manner that we're not aware of, because the governor hasn't even finally approved the money. We don't know how much it is. We don't know where it's going, who's getting it. Although, based on the description of what the money is going to be used for, it's pretty clear that urban, large districts with a lot of poverty, a lot of English language learners and immigrants, whose the achievement gap is significant, is going to get money. Then there has to be a plan for how the money is going to be used. And the commissioner, thank goodness, has recognized that districts like Nahant may get a little tiny piece of money, and districts like Springfield or similar districts would get a very large amount of money. They're going to have a detailed procedure for providing a plan. We're probably, unless I'm totally shocked by the amount of money we get, and I would suggest there's very little chance of that happening, we're going to have a very small procedure. The procedure must detail certain things. One is the plan for spending the additional funds. You can't just, give the superintendent a raise, as an example. The second thing, it needs to detail how the community will solicit feedback via, quote, hearings or in the public comment section of a regularly scheduled meeting from community members, parents, and guardians, how they feel one of two things can occur in the district. Number one, how the money should be spent, or number two, how the achievement gap should be closed. We basically have an achievement gap that reflects special education students. That's really all we have. So it's really about special education. Later, when I talk about the budget, you'll see that we're already spending in next year's budget and this year's budget more money on those services. So we're already down the road. So the suggested steps in the email by the commissioner was to educate the community, which I'm doing now, and I'll work with the principal about putting something in the newsletter about this. We have to wait to receive the governor's formal budget proposal before we can say how much we're going to be getting. We have already begun mapping out a stakeholder engagement plan in February and March, and that plan must be submitted to the DESE by the 1st of April, or else we don't get the money. So that's where we are now. I hope that was somewhat coherent.
When do we expect the governor, when do we expect to know how much?
This week.
That
But
makes sense.
it's a significant, I do know that the towns and cities have already received their Chapter 90 additional, the level of the additional Chapter 90 money, so I know they're working on it. Okay. And as I said, I will give you an additional report next meeting if we have it by then, or the following one. And we will begin to move forward on trying to get a process that's, you know, the administration really takes the brunt of additional time rather than the school committee. But anything any school committee member wishes to do to engage the community vis-a-vis the achievement gap or spending our vast coffers of money that we're going to get, please feel free to communicate, you know.
One more question for me. When would this money come in? Would it be available for the 2020-2021 year?
No, this is
So-
current money.
Current money?
Yeah, this is a surplus in this year. The legislature, I believe, got about $500 million of it, and I believe the rainy day fund or the surplus account of the state got a really healthy amount of it. Off the top of my head, I think it was $700 million. So, and transportation got some, cities and towns in Chapter 90 got some, so that surplus was divided up in various pools.
So I apologize, and I'm probably just not savvy on this. If the money comes in, or you need to submit by April, you said,
Yep,
and the money comes in, I assume it would be after you submit in April.
yes.
So then we have May and June of this school year.
Well, it's April 1st, so theoretically we can spend it in April, May, and June, July, and August, perhaps. They can, you know, the guidelines from the DESE can really be flexible. Now, the other factor that enters into it is that the DESE is adamant about being an evidence-based expenditure, which they should be. But we won't know if the money that we spend has an impact until next year's MCAS, because by the time we spend the money, our students will have already been prepared for MCAS. But again, I'm jump-starting my thought process without the guidelines. The commissioner could say, you can spend the money anytime you want as long as it's in your plan. I don't know. It's always exciting to, you know, to get this. Typically this money is, you probably have heard the phrase pothole money for the towns and cities. And it's called pothole money because most mayors and town administrators use the additional funds to fix potholes in the springtime. But the money typically had to be spent before the end of the fiscal year. But we had a really big surplus this year in the state. Okay.
Plenty of potholes out there still. Plenty of potholes still out there, though.
Plenty of potholes.
Yes.
Unfortunately, every time they fix them this time of the year, the next time you get a little ice or snow, pop, they're gone. Boy, I hit one on Storrow Drive about 3 weeks ago. I thought my car was not coming back out. All right. Madam Chair, I'll go right to 5D with your permission.
Yes, please.
More good news for the Johnson Elementary School, the students and our community, and particularly our parents and guardians. On December 2nd, we had our lead and copper water sampling done. This is done pursuant to state law, and it is done by a set procedure that everyone follows. And in your packet, you see the results of that test. The samples were collected on September 4th. I apologize. We got the report. The report's dated December 2nd, but we actually didn't receive it then. All copper and lead levels at all sites, all water fountains, the nurse's office, the cafeteria, and in the kitchen were found to be significantly below the thresholds of healthy copper and lead levels. So we do not have a mitigation plan that we have to take part in. Typically, a mitigation plan in a school would be, depending upon the levels, the first level would be you have to run the water every morning to clear the pipes. If the levels were very high, we would have to have a company come in and actually do a mitigation. But it's my opinion that we have such good results because in 2007, a lot of work was done even in the existing structure. Since we're speaking of water, let me talk about the water main break. The water main going to the Johnson School has a hole in it, and the water began to pour out of the asphalt right by the flagpole. So we turned it off. I called the DPW. They mobilized to work that evening and all night to repair it so we wouldn't have to miss a day of school. When Mr. Taylor came back, he smiled at me and said, "We're not going to do anything." And of course, he did that to make sure that I would get upset. There's a redundancy loop in the water supply for the Johnson School. What they were able to do was simply turn off the portion of the pipe that had the break in it without interfering with our water supply whatsoever.
What's the redundancy loop for?
Evidently in 2007, when the new portion of the school was put on, when they put the new pipe to the building, they put a redundancy supply in. So they left a supply that was there, connected the two of them, so that what was leaking is the old loop. So it didn't, and it was really interesting. We had a after-school party the day we found out, and so we had a lot of green Christmas trees being made by youth and children with green paint up to their elbows. So, and I was in the kitchen washing them up because I thought the water was going to go off any second, and it never happened.
I know some of those children that have the green paint.
Yeah,
Yeah, you didn't get it off all of them.
I didn't.
It's
I wasn't
okay.
going to go that far.
It's perfectly
I can
okay.
assure you that what you saw at home was a mere fraction of the amount they had on them.
Totally fine.
But anyway, when the weather gets better, it'll be repaired. And then, Madam Chair, what's not on your agenda, because I just had these conversations in the last few hours, I want to talk to you about the damage that the school experienced during the power outage on December 9th. On December 9th, if you remember, in the morning, power went out in a significant portion of Nahant. It is my understanding, based on our insurance adjuster's report to me, that it happened because a horizontal arm on a power pole snapped. I don't know where that was. Frankly, for a significant portion of time, I didn't get any answer at all from National Grid about what happened. So it was repaired, and power was restored. Unfortunately, at the Johnson School, we have 3-phase feed or 4-phase power. In other words, if you think about I think the easiest way to understand it for me is, if you think about your plugs, they're 110. Your dryer, if you have an electric dryer, is 2 times that. So it has 2 circuits feeding it to be 220. Our school has 3 circuits, 330, plus a ground. What happened was they restored power in a way that we only got power to 2 of those 3 circuits. Luckily, we had an electrician here, and we had Craft Associates, who is the company that maintains our generator here, because what was happening is our generator was going off and on. So we called, they came right over, and he actually figured out what was going on by putting a meter on these really very large feed wires. So unfortunately, because we had 2/3 of the system fed, we had damage. The damage was about $1,000 worth of damage to our generator that has been repaired, and our generator is in excellent working condition. And we had about $26,000 in damage to the school. We lost ballasts and light bulbs. We lost low voltage units everywhere, and that would include our motion sensors, our exit lights, our computer controls in our large fuse boxes, and that's about it. So what has to happen is we have to have electricians come in and replace the blown ballast, replace the blown light bulbs, and every exit light in the building has to be replaced. And they were basically finishing that up today. An example would be my office was fine. Mr. Andrews had no lights in his office. He was working by flashlight. So I have been working, first of all, I put a report in of the damage immediately to the Maya Insurance Company. That's the Municipal Association Insurance Company that covers the town and all of its departments. And they have an underwriter, I forget the name of the insurance company, I've never seen any paperwork, I apologize, who sent an adjuster. The adjuster is going to, and has already filed a report with National Grid for the disbursement of the responsibility to their insurance company. And the adjuster has told me that he is going to supply National Grid with not only the cost, but a request that the portion of the insurance that the town would normally pay, the deductible, is also covered by National Grid. Today I had a conversation with our town administrator about how that would work. You know, do we get the bills? And how the revenue coming in from the various places gets put together. The issue is, from our point of view, is we do not have a mechanism to take money other than the monies for specific purposes. The town typically gets money that is given to us. For example, we had about $7,000 worth of damage in a previous storm. If you remember, the fence around the primary playground was damaged. We paid for that, and then the town got the money. And that happened to be in a year where we had enough surplus that it didn't matter. I'm anticipating, number one, because of the size of the check that needs to be written to pay the electrician. So we're basically talking already about $27,000. So we're not going to be able to pay that this year. So we have to figure out how that mechanism is actually going to work. And there's several things that could happen. and I will bring that detail to you at a later date. I have to email the adjuster several questions that Mr. Bartola asked me to ask. The simplest thing would be for the billing to go to the town gets the check, they pay the money. But one of the things we want to know is, are we going to have to wait for National Grid to cover the cost, or will our insurance cover it and then get the money from National Grid? Because if we're waiting for National Grid, it may take a while. So all those details have not been worked out. The good news is we're insured. Clearly it was, I mean, we have an electrician and a generator expert who were there telling us why it happened, that we had nothing to do with. The other good thing that happened was they shut down the mains in the building right away when they realized what happened. So this damage occurred in an hour and a half, maybe less. If we had left it on all day till, I think maybe full power restored maybe about 1:30, 2 o'clock that afternoon, we would have had more damage. So that's the good news. A, it's covered. B, we limited the damage to probably that first surge. And I'll keep you fully informed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, from
Okay.
For those of you keeping score, the $26,000 is an estimate from Pool and Electric. The $879 is actually a bill, which you don't have in front of you, because I'm not going to pay it till I know where the money is coming from. Okay? So that may fluctuate.
And the total, sorry, I thought you said 26 plus 1,000, so one.
Yeah, $26,879 right now, but the 26 is an estimate. I don't have any invoices. And that 26, I was clear with the electric company, that needed to cover shipping, materials, installation, testing, because the insurance company is holding that money
Right.
somehow. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the principal's report, Mr. Andrews.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've distributed a principal's report to everyone. I hope you have a copy. I want to talk about 3 areas right now. Teaching and learning, logistics in the facility, and then let you know about some upcoming events that we're having. Under the area of teaching and learning, I'd like to let you know that we have added what we're calling a motor pathway to the school. This is a designed take a break hallway activity routine that students can take part in. We've rolled it out with a few students who are eager to take part in it. Students start by going to the office, picking up a heavy ball that you might see in a physical therapy office, and then carrying it to 6 different stations and doing either yoga or a balance board activity, hopping, different things that I've laid out, and take just a few minutes out of their classroom time, and that way they can take a break but don't have to say, oh, I just need to go to the bathroom or something like that, and be more structured and actually get out some of the movement that they have inside. This Friday we'll be having Professional Development Day, and the teacher will be having an opportunity to talk about how it's worked so far in the pilot that we've done, and then perhaps how we can bring it to more students in the school. And speaking of Professional Development Day, that's on Friday, so a reminder to all parents, we don't have class on Friday, but teachers will be in class, as well paraprofessionals. We're really looking forward to having a workshop with Dr. Kathy Quill. She is our behavior specialist that is contracted through the school, and she's going to be sharing with us how to help students behavior and how to modify student behavior in a positive way that's going to get the outcomes that we want to see. Aside from that prime topic, we'll also be looking at how to use the weather station in our classrooms. We'll be looking at how to use Google Classroom to track assignments. We'll be learning some new morning meeting games, looking at gardening plans for the spring. And also, I was able to meet with two new educators at the Northeastern University's Marine Science Center today, Emily Duan and Sierra Munoz, and talked about their new role. You might remember Val Perini. She just left the university. And so we'll be looking at some new lessons that they're developing and sharing that with teachers on Friday. In the area logistics facility, we are planning for online student registration for kindergarten registration for this fall. So our minds are set to kindergarten registration currently. I was in touch with School Brains representatives. I looked at what they use, what they currently have as default for online registration, and see how we can use that. We're also looking at sending out the parent info sheet that we picked up last fall. Remember that we worked on that, refined it, and talked about sending it out at the end of the new year as a trial before we send it out the fall. So I'll be working with Charles and Sherry April on that to get that out to parents so they can review the information. And that'll help us, again, test our database.
May I ask a question about kindergarten
Oh, sure.
registration? I know some schools, some towns, do the kindergarten screening in the spring
Yes.
to prepare for the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been asked of me, why doesn't the Johnson School do that? And wouldn't it help us to have our screenings completed ahead of time to anticipate the needs of the students, with some advance notice for the fall? I thought I'd bring it up as a question here. I didn't have a good answer. I figured I would ask.
Sure.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, the age-old balance is, do you do kindergarten registration in the spring that may be more convenient for the adults in a couple of different ways, including our staff, or do you wait till the last moment when the students are more like the students who are going to be coming to school?
They change so
Because
much.
the spring versus September, or the last week of August, the life of a 5-year-old is a significant portion of their life, and many change.
Absolutely, that makes sense.
I'm not an expert. I just have been dealing with this for a long, long time, and that's the debate. And I would refer, this question to Mr. Andrews and the early childhood experts to, come back to us and give us an answer as, what's better. And I didn't mean that what's convenient for adults in any disrespect.
No, you meant it in a planning way.
Right,
the way
it
that I'm
makes
asking the
planning
question.
easier, parents. The problem is, during the summer, children of that age change sometimes significantly. Again, I'm a middle school, secondary person, so I'm not going to have a position other than I know what the debate is.
Understood.
Question, have you ever seen it implemented in a way where the borderline students are then reevaluated closer to the end? Meaning, like, if you do it in the spring, you can kind of plan ahead what you're saying, and then I assume some students will fit the standard criteria for kindergarten, and then there'll be some borderline students.
Yes, I have. As a matter of fact, I've seen, even if it's done in August, students are reevaluated very quickly, maybe by October. I've seen that. The other logistical question is, what do we do with the students who are in the program when the testing is going on? Because we don't have a testing staff like a district that has 10,000 students might have. Our early childhood teachers do the testing. So if they're testing in the spring, the students they have this year can't be in school. So what we've kind of thought about is, do we bring subs in? Again, that's the balance. So again, I refer this to the early childhood people to come back to you and give you their recommendation.
And if I may ask a question about that, is one of the benefits that they could start the same day as their family members?
Yes.
Is that what one of the primary? I mean, I'm just curious about the motivation.
I think that in the conversation, if I perceived it correctly, there were two parts. One was then the kindergarten students would indeed start on the same day as the rest of the students in the school. And the second was just, it's more a perception as a non-educator, just kind of a feeling that, wouldn't it make sense to be prepared and know what the students will need with more notice. And again, the responses I'm already hearing are informative and make perfect sense, that students' needs would change could possibly change significantly over a few months. And without that kind of understanding, it was my gut reaction to say, oh yes, why wouldn't we want to know more ahead of time and get things more in line ahead of time. But I hear what you're.
One other point about that is that I know that I'm pretty reticent to intervene in kindergarten before January, where the student is new to school, new to the teacher, thinking about their classroom community, learning how to be a student in school, and getting used to routine. And so a major goal of kindergarten is social emotional learning, of course, and routine, and being comfortable and feeling safe. And so I think, and then there's also the piece where students have a wide developmental difference, just, every caterpillar is different, so in those 6 months, the main goal is really just, as I said. So I think that I don't think there's an urgent, and if there is, we'll know it when they're in preschool. They'll come to us from early intervention and have already some services in place from preschool, because we certainly have, OT and speech going on heavily in students who are 3 and 4.
Right. It might just be some students who go to other preschools and come in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had that opportunity to
Right.
screen.
And sometimes those students don't register until August, or they don't move here until August. So then we'll have to screen them anyhow.
Understood.
So it's a real organized folks that are already here that will do that registration, who may have already got EI, early intervention services too. So it's something to look at. But as you know, it's a multifaceted kind of question.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure thing.
So do we want to look at this more at a future meeting? Kind of come back to it?
Sure. I wanted to bring
it-
up for
it-
discussion.
I mean,
It's up to the school committee. We'd be speaking for the early childhood specialist, our social worker, our special education director, and Mr. Andrews. If you would like some information about the pros and cons of those two testing periods, we'd be happy to provide it. As I'm sitting here listening and thinking, which is always a challenge for someone my age, if we did it in the spring, Mr. Andrews, what we could do is perhaps spread it out a little more to make it a half day of testing, so that, because what I'm worried about is the students who are in the kindergarten don't have their teacher for X days. That's the downside of the spring, as compared to the kindergarten teachers in August have not had kindergarten yet. They come in, parents bring them in, they test, then they start. Usually we start in 2 days, right?
Yes. And sometimes. Yeah.
So the sense of loss seems less. But if we spread it out more and the regular teacher is with their students at least half of every day, then the impact would be I think, less.
I think to some of the parents, the sense of loss would be kind of equivalent, because
Yeah.
if you're losing the days at the beginning of the school year versus the spring, either way, those school days.
But Madam Chair, if I may, but it's a different set of parents.
It is.
That's-
Yeah. I think that I guess I just hear from parents who feel like then the kindergartners are starting late. So there's not from everyone, I'm sure. It's just, you hear from a couple of people, and I felt like I wanted to have an informed response.
Absolutely.
So this is really helpful. And
So, Madam Chair, why don't we make a report back to you?
That'd be great.
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And in the meantime, we'll collect some information.
There may even be a hybrid model. Who knows?
Selfishly, I have 2 kindergartners starting next year, so I'd love to learn more.
Here we go.
I'll ask what my wife does, and she has 125 kindergartens in her school, so I can ask what they do.
And we're small enough to be flexible. I don't know what that means, by the way, in terms of flex.
Right, and some years it may be more challenging than others, just.
Yeah. Yeah, we are definitely
Size.
small enough to be, we test 23, 24 kids. One of the things I'm worried about in the spring is missing kids who register late, then we have to take the staff again. So, but maybe we can figure that out.
And they start right now, so normally the grades 1 through 6, they start on a Tuesday typically, and the kindergartners don't start till Thursday. Forgive me, I'm trying to remember. So, or they don't start until after the Labor Day holiday on the following
I'm
week.
quite certain that we only need 2 days for testing regardless, and maybe 1.
So their first
it would only
regular
be,
day
it's
would
only
be
a
the
day or 2
Thursday.
delay, for sure.
Okay.
Mr. Andrews, another question to ask the staff is, would they be willing, because this would be voluntary, to come in early and do this testing in the late summer, but before the actual time the school began? I mean, the cost is, for the number of tests that we give, the cost is not prohibitive.
That would be a great option to explore. That really would.
Yeah.
But that, Madam Chair, I want the school committee to understand, it's not contractual, so it would have to be voluntary.
Right.
Right, of course.
But hypothetically, if that were the case and that were to work out, then that would sink the whole building, schedule-wise, which would be. Yeah. Especially for those who do have multiple children,
Yeah.
and they have a work schedule and they're trying to have one person here and one person here and.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can completely understand the challenges parents face, especially as they're sending their kids off to school for the kindergarten year and trying to balance all these different schedules as well as work and life. So let me let you know about the upcoming events that we have. We have Corey the Dribbler. The PTO has sponsored this bully prevention program, which will be coming to the school, and that'll be on January 23rd. And then on January 31st, we're going to have this inflatable whale that I may have mentioned before, and I just met with the Northeastern University folks today about it. They're very eager to have it in. I guess it's actually from the actual whale I was reading about online is from Stellwagen Bank. It's one of the most famous whales, and it has a lot of children and grandchildren, and so you can learn about its whole family online. And I think it's going to be a great way to kind of connect with an animal that actually needs support, and then also has a life story of its own, and then get to meet a model of that, a full-size model of that whale. And so that'll be on January 31st.
Wait, what's happening? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a large inflatable whale.
Oh, inflatable whale.
A large inflatable whale.
I was like, what is going on?
And we're not railing it.
I was with you.
And then I was like, this
How do we bring them?
Family.
whale has a family?
Pretty cool, though.
So I haven't changed my registration process that much.
This will only happen at high tide, correct?
But students will get to learn about the family of salt, which is a real whale and alive, a grandmother whale.
Salt is a whale that's out in the ocean right now that
Yes.
they've been tracking.
This is a
And-
mock version of salt.
And we're
Right,
having the
and we'll get a
blowout
mock
version.
version, right, a full model scale, full scale model.
That's
We'll go
cool.
inside her and see how big our heart is. It's inflatable. You'll see how big our intestines are.
Charming.
And you'll be able to put your hand inside what's called a blubber glove. So these are all the different activities that Northeastern is going to bring to the school for us. And this is all for free, actually, from a grant that Stellwagen Bank has.
I believe I have done it. I think I've
Have you
seen
been
salt.
there?
They had something similar, maybe it was salt, at the boat show last year at the convention center. And it was a model and it showed all the organs of the whale. You can walk in the whale. My kid loved it. He was just walking and playing in the whale and it showed the whole insides of the whale and how the whale functioned. So
Story.
it was really good.
You beat me to it. I was going to say, so we write stories about what it's like to be Jonah.
Jonah, that's it. I couldn't remember.
Plenty of opportunity. And then I also, the last thing I wanted to mention is just that I wanted to make you aware of a Johnson School at a glance sheet that I gave to you in behind your packet. This was after some discussion about let's make our information really clear and straightforward to parents. So I've been giving this out to new parents as they join the school, along with our brochure, which kind of gives a higher level piece. But if you really want to know what the time and stop and start time is, and what online resources we have, and then also what extra care options we have. It was a quick effort to get something out quickly. I'll be refining it in the coming week, and then getting this out to, making this available to kindergarten parents, so they have a snapshot. If you have any feedback from me on it, I'd welcome it. Mr. Schrader?
I was just gonna say that the drop-off says PM, not AM.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Just confused.
I didn't hear.
Yeah, it's not a dinner supervisory for 10 minutes. Thank you. Sorry about that.
This is great, though. It's simple and clear and gives pertinent information.
Yeah. And if you want a little 10-minute break in the evening, let us know. Okay. If you have any other edits or ideas of information that could be added, I'm sure, I'd like to add some graphics perhaps, and then, whatever else I can do to fill the back sheet.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. That concludes my report.
The only thought I had is you may want to put the word "over" at the bottom so everyone turns it over.
Sure.
Because I, for one, did not.
No, I'll keep it on one page if it's doable.
All right.
The other, Madam Chair, just one more addition to the principal's report. You may hear some concern that we have been stressing the drop-off zones being no idle zones. And, in the wintertime, there's some pushback. So, but it is a state law. We certainly don't want to do anything other than remind parents and have them turn their ignitions off. It is a finable offense, but obviously, we are not looking to report anyone. That's not the way we do business. But it is important, and the research is very clear, that young children who are around noxious fumes are impacted. So we have been reminding parents, both personally at the drop-off zones and pickup zones, and also in newsletters. So if you hear something, it's truly happening. We are reminding them.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah, sure. Great, thank you. So we're going to move on to old business and other matters. So coming to fiscal year 2021 budget. Mr. Pierantozzi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Absent the revenue information from the governor and the DESE, and absent any additional information that would lead me to believe that the budget that I produced earlier can be trimmed. The budget document you have in front of you is basically the same one that you saw at the second draft. Between the first and second draft, it got trimmed. I have not trimmed it again. I thought I would wait until I had some more information from the surplus funding to see if any additional trimming can be done. It's the largest increase I've asked for as a superintendent. It's right in the neighborhood of 4%. It's 3.96%. But we have some costs that are going up significantly, like the 66% of the increase is the tuition increase to Swampscott and special education out-of-district tuitions. You know, the controllable funds are minimal. If I add in there our contractual obligations to our collective bargaining groups, the number jumps to over 80%. So, and we have reduced small amounts of money in other line items. And Madam Chair, I know you have an announcement perhaps where I can make it about a meeting.
Yes, so we did hear back from the FinCom committee just this afternoon, and they'd like to meet next Tuesday, the 21st. So that's fine by me. I can make it.
And I mean, please feel free to communicate to the chair that I will be available. As a matter of fact, today I work with Mrs. Katzos, and I'm pretty well solid. I have just one set of numbers. When I do addition, it's one number. When I do subtraction, it's another, and I can't figure that out. Hopefully tomorrow she'll review it and figure it out. But I have the PowerPoint for the. Typically, I do the PowerPoint at the hearing first. Mm-hmm. This year, because the FinCom wants to meet with us early, I'll do it backwards.
What time?
7, I think.
I don't recall, but I think
We'll
it's
verify.
7 o'clock. Yeah.
Would you like a quorum? Would you like it to be posted and to have all of us, or do you want to delegate 2 individuals? What is your idea?
I think it would be nice to, I think this year, as we know, the budget's not going to be as simple as it was in prior years. I don't know if we can get a quorum, but I think,
I'm unavailable on Tuesday next week.
I think I probably can. I just didn't want to be presumptuous if you had decided that,
No.
you wanted to delegate 2 individuals and,
no.
it's simple. So,
I believe I could make that as well.
double check and
Okay.
let you know
I haven't
ASAP,
responded
but,
back, I just was reading it on the train
I was
this
going to
evening,
Paris that
so-
evening, but I canceled that so that I could go to the FinCom.
Please never do that.
Clear my schedule. All right, so we will make that meeting happen, whether, I know I can make it, so there'll be a few of us there, and I will, I'll share the details.
Do we have to post then our attendance, since there would be,
If it's a core, if it's, yes.
if there'd be 3 or more of us?
Do we? Yes, so,
The safest thing to do would be to post it. I'll post it.
okay.
Okay,
Once
Thank
I
you.
find out what time it is, we'll post it.
okay.
Thursday.
Yeah, and, thank you.
That way nobody, I mean, there is an interpretation that if you're going to another meeting, even if you have a quorum and you don't actually meet and discuss something separately, it doesn't have to be posted. It's always better to post it.
That's fine, makes sense. So next is the policy JFABD, homeless students enrollment rights and services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the next 3 items are, as a reminder, in response to a sustainability audit. Now, the sustainability audit is not about the sustainability of the school district. It's about, it probably would be more accurate to call it a student consistency audit. It's about providing a consistent education to students. If you remember correctly, we actually voted a new policy that addressed these concerns on March 26th of 2019. Subsequently, the auditor has stated emphatically that she was not happy with the policy that we provided her with during the audit, that she preferred two things. One, that the homeless, the military children, and foster care children have all of their own separate policies. And in addition to that, that I would not serve as the homeless student liaison. So we've changed that. Mrs. Canal is our special education director, is the homeless liaison. And tonight we will finish with, depending upon your choosing to do so, the transference to the three policies that the state wants to see. So in front of you, you have policies that, once again, I do not want to assume anything but other than your own personal, grammatical, non-contextual edits, I would hesitate to edit because these have already been reviewed by MASC and by the state and approved, meeting the guidelines both at the state and federal level. So there's two things that need to be done. Number one, if you so choose to approve these three policies, but in between the first and the second, to rescind a policy that's in your packet that has the same letter code of one of the policies that we're passing.
Sounds good. Yep. Are you happy if I make a motion?
Yep, does anyone have any questions? No? So I think the first thing we'll need is a motion to rescind the current homeless students policy.
I'll make a motion to rescind current policy JFABD.
BD? Yeah. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So moving on, then, now we've done, this is our second reading.
Now, Madam
of
Chair,
the
if I may,
first read. Okay, of
you
course.
just passed a new policy, JFABD. I would respectfully suggest your next order of business to be to rescind the current JFABD.
We just
rescinded it.
current
Oh, I'm sorry, you rescinded it first?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. We
Okay,
rescinded it
so we don't have a
can
policy now.
No, at the, not at the moment.
I apologize.
Moving on, though, does anyone have any questions regarding the new policy?
I'll quickly make a motion to approve the new
Hopefully
policy
there's no homeless emergency in the next 3 seconds.
for JFABD, homeless students enrollment right and services.
Perfect.
And I second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Very good. Okay. Next. Now, the next three policies were policies, as you described, that have been broken up. We've done the homeless, now there's the military children and children in foster care. This is our second reading of both of these, so,
Separate them.
right, but we can approve each unless there's any questions? No? So can I have a motion, please, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the educational opportunities for military children?
I'll make a motion to accept the policy for educational opportunities for military children, JFABE.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. And then moving on to educational opportunities for children in foster care. This is the next one.
I'll make a motion to accept the policy for educational opportunities for children in foster care, JFABF.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Okay, moving on, Mr. Parentozzi, do you want to speak to the guidelines for community use of the facility, Johnson School facilities?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. At our last meeting, the school committees made some recommendations for clarity and organization regarding our Johnson School facilities use rates for 2020. I had presented that to you in response to a communication you received several meetings ago. This document that is before you incorporates, in my opinion, all of the recommendations for change and improvement that the school committee made at the last meeting.
So nothing has changed on this since the last meeting, correct, that you said?
I'm sorry.
Nothing has changed on this since we saw it last.
Right, he made some tweaks.
Yes, several things changed.
I can't remember from then to now.
That's okay. Let me see if I can help. We clarified the list of hourly charges. There was a redundancy that was inconsistent, that people would not really be clear of what their hourly rate was going to be. So we clarified that. We moved up the details about the custodian and the hourly rate when a custodian is present. We added the Nahant Education Foundation to the Civic and Community Group. We clarified the first condition statement by making 501c3 accurate and by saying who pays the for-profit rate, and the for-profit rate is clearer than it was originally because it said for-profit rate for community groups.
Does every group have to be represented? For example, is this just a sample?
Yeah.
Or do you want every group represented? Because if every group is going to be represented, then we're going to have to add the hockey under the for-profit.
At the top, it says examples.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. That was my question, if they're just a sample example, or are they, or we have to list them?
This looks great, looks nice and clear.
The other thing we did was highlighted the automated external defibrillator on page 2. That was buried in the verbiage, but we wanted to make sure people understood it was there. But because when a school activity is being held, we are obligated under the new law to actually have somebody trained to use it in the building, but we are not when someone else uses the building. So I wanted to clarify that. And then we numbered them. Page 2 is now numbered. I added drugs because it said alcohol, but it didn't say drugs, which really didn't seem logical. And I added my signature to the facilities use form because frankly, the staff at the central office was adamant that Mr. Andrews would not get stuck making these decisions because he has a job to do running the building, whereas this is more of a business determination. But we left both because, as principal, he should be aware of what's going on. But I will ultimately make the decisions regarding use, not he, which he has a big smile on his face.
Very good. So I don't think there's any changes to our policy. It was really just the form, so I don't believe we need to make any
Nope.
motions. Thank you. Moving on to personnel matters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a very quick list of really positive things. On Tuesday next week, our early childhood part-time teacher will be returning to us from a parental leave. That has been confirmed in writing today at approximately 1 o'clock. We have posted a paraprofessional and educational support personnel position for 8:30 to 2:15 on full school days. Excuse me, 12:15. I apologize. That's not a full-time position, but it's an everyday position to respond to an IEP meeting and requirement that was determined by the IEP team, which met last week of December, I believe. That position is posted, and there is a substitute fulfilling that role now so that the student has the support that the IEP team said is necessary. I want to thank Mr. Andrews, who has done the majority of the work on all of these hires, including he has been able to find 2 new substitute teachers. And I don't want to be in any way a genderist or a sexist, but both of them are male, which in my experience is really unusual. Both have vast experience in the business world and are college educated, and so we're thrilled to have 2 more subs, because this is the time of the year where our sub list dwindles. So I want to thank him.
Well, it's great to have diverse staff in any way, shape, or form. So
Not easy to find.
that's fantastic.
It's my pleasure, and I will also add that we only had male applicants for the position.
Really?
Yeah, so, it's not graduating out of college right now. I mean, it's not that time of year where you might be getting people who weren't hired looking for a substitute teaching position. I don't know, but that was interesting to me as well.
Yeah, it's great.
And one more in the docket that's also a gentleman who's an applicant.
Great. Nice to have them.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on. Is there any other business from the committee? We talked about the FinCom and...
Yep.
I'll make a motion to,
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the survey that I still started and haven't finished.
Yes, yes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the January 14th school committee meeting at 8:26.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.